Nicole Malliotakis is the Congresswoman representing Staten Island and southern Brooklyn, and there is so much to talk about. I'd like to start by talking about gerrymandering. Texas has decided to gerrymander 5 congressional seats, turn them to Republican. There's going to be a reaction in California and here in New York. How do you feel about the fact that Kathy Hochul now wants to change the seats and to gerrymander some seats and turn them from Republican to Democrat?
Well, first of all, let me make clear that regardless of whether it's Republicans or Democrats doing it, gerrymandering is wrong. It's very corrupt. It takes away the voice of the people. We need to have competitive maps. So the voters are the ones who decide who represents them. And if they're not happy, they have the ability to fire that individual. What we have in New York City, sadly, is only one competitive seat, which happens to be mine. But yeah, in 2022, they tried to egregiously gerrymander my seat, and we sued. And that was the reason the entire state map was thrown out. The voters of New York have made it very clear. They want independence when redistricting these maps. They do not want political gerrymander. They made it clear in referendum. So when we sued and got the entire map thrown out, we got a judge to do it.
See, but here's the real question. So now that there's a war of gerrymandering, Texas started it. They want because the control of the House in 26 is a big deal. So they want to have 5 more Republican seats. California is going to do 5 more Democratic seats, and that's going to start a whole war around the country. And when they look at New York, and they look at the Republican seats they can gerrymander, you're target number 1.
Well, I think that, first of all, I think it was wrong that the Republicans in Texas open up this floodgate. I don't agree with it. And it's clear in the law that that politically redrawing our maps has to be done every decade, once a decade, as it relates to the census. So it shouldn't be happening. But here we are. And we're going to have to just continue to fight the state legislature on this. They can't do it, number one, without a constitutional amendment. And that constitutional amendment would have to be approved by the voters. So the earliest this could happen would potentially be for 2028, but the voters will have a say unless they dismiss the will of the voters like they did back in 2022 when the voters said they didn't want political gerrymandering and they decided to do it either way. And I think Republicans can win on merit. We just delivered significant tax relief. We restored the SALT relief. We were able to get a senior deduction where 88% of seniors are going to see their tax on Social Security eliminated. We are going to see the economy continue to do well. We saw the GDP growing. We're seeing trillions in private investment. Manufacturing is expanding here in the United States. And I think that we're going to continue to see these good things happening, and Republicans don't need to do what Democrats have done in New York, which is to gerrymander to try to tilt the scale.
So if Republicans don't need to do this, why is Texas doing it at the behest of President Trump?
Well, it's a very good question for the members in Texas, but I've been very clear in saying I don't agree with it, whether it's Republicans or Democrats doing it. In fact, I think we need to find a way to move forward with, perhaps we want to start using artificial intelligence or some type of computerized mapping system where it is completely competitive and it's done in a fair and balanced manner to give you the most competitive districts throughout the country in each state, so that way the voters really have optimal say, and people have to go out there and fight for each and every vote. They need to explain their voting record, and they need to win on merit. And like I said, right now, New Yorkers don't really have that choice in New York City. All these Democrat districts, they're what's called like plus 20, 30 Democrat districts. Mine is the closest to a competitive race, and we won by double digits because we're doing exactly what I just said we should be doing, which is going out and winning each and every vote and having a voting record that reflects what the people who sent me to Washington to do wanted.
So the next question I have is this. The president also wants to end mail-in ballots. He says that that's a way to steal an election. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think that certain states like New York have expanded mail-in ballots to have no excuse that anyone can get it. And since some states that do it automatically, where they send you a mail-in ballot, whether you requested it or not, that's wrong, and there needs to be safeguards put in place. However, we do need to maintain mail-in ballots for legitimate reasons. If somebody's on vacation and not going to be in the district on that day, somebody's disabled, senior citizens,
military service,
these are legitimate reasons. So I don't think it is possible to really eliminate mail-in voting completely, but it does need to be limited, and it does need to be safeguarded, and it does need to be within a certain time frame. What we saw in California, where ballots were coming in weeks after the election. One of my colleagues was winning by 5% on election night, and then all of a sudden she lost by a few votes. Weeks later, that smells of corruption, and those are the types of safeguards that need to be put in place to prevent that from happening.
So how do you feel about the fact that Justin Brannan is thinking of running against you?
Well, look, Justin Brannan is so out of sync with the people of Staten Island and southern Brooklyn. Here's somebody who supported and voted to defund the police. He was a co-sponsor of the bill to let non-citizens vote in our local election, something that I went to court and stopped successfully. He's supporting Zoran Mandani, the most radical left candidate. He's chosen to align himself with that. The other day he was calling for no cooperation with ICE to deport people who are in our country illegally committing crimes. And, by the way, as finance chairman, he has increased property taxes year after year because the property tax levy under his watch as finance chairman has gone up. So he is really so out of sync and will not be accepted by the people of Staten Island and Brooklyn.
I need to ask you about Mamdani being what looks like the presumptive candidate for mayor in New York. Excuse me. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I think that as people learn more about him, they're going to reject his policies. Hopefully that'll happen, that they'll learn more about him before the election, because this is somebody who will make New York City less safe, less affordable. If you look at what he has supported already, he supports defunding the police. He supports abolishing ICE. He doesn't believe that there should be there's a place for prisons in our society. He has embraced the radical bail law that has released criminals onto our street. Now he's saying he wants to decriminalize more crimes, including prostitution, which would just deteriorate quality of life further in our city. And he's embraced the radical ideology of Karl Marx, literally out of the communist playbook of Karl Marx, seizing the means of production, abolishing private property rights, government-run supermarkets. These are not things that I think common sense New Yorkers support. There
are those who think that President Trump would love to have him as the mayor because he could make him the face of the Democratic Party nationally, which some think would help in 2026 to keep control of Congress.
Well, that may be true. Politically, it might be a dream for Republicans to have a face of the party that is a communist face, but that is not something that I want as a resident and taxpayer here in New York City. I love this city, and we have to make sure that we put it on the right path. He has been very clear, saying he wants to bring our city back to his favorite mayor's vision, Bill de Blasio. That is not something I think New Yorkers want, nor do I think the New Yorkers who fled communism and socialism, like my mother fled Cuba, want somebody who literally embraces those radical policies of Karl Marx. I think that the more New Yorkers learn about him, that they will reject him at the ballot box. And I hope that, they learn about him soon. And I count on people like you in the media to expose him.
Well, you were an assemblywoman in Albany who ran for mayor. He's an assemblyman in Albany running for mayor. Do you see some similarities there?
Well, it's funny because they said I didn't have enough experience to run the largest city in the country, the biggest economic engine of our country. But yes, I was in the assembly for twice as long, and I certainly was a citizen for much longer than he is. And I think that, I would reject him not just on that lack of experience. That is a big lack of experience. Only being a citizen for 7 years, only being in the state assembly, the only office he's held for 5 years, with no other real experience in the world. But what I think what makes him most dangerous is the ideology that he has embraced, that he will, again, tie the hands of the NYPD, seek to defund them, get rid of jails in our society, embrace policies that would drive up costs, that would drive businesses and our tax base out of this city. These are things I think that common sense Democrats, independents, Republicans would agree with me on. And I look, I have 3 other candidates. We never had so many choices in the mayor's race before. And if they don't, I think they've got to find one of those other candidates that they think are more palatable.
So we're going to have to leave it right there for now. But our conversation continues right after the show on our streaming channel, CBS News New York. We are back with Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis. I wanted to talk to you about the plethora of ICE arrests that have been going on in New York City, and you know, the fact that you know, there's been a suit filed by the mayor to prevent ICE from making courthouse arrests, saying that's not the right place to do it. How do you feel about that?
Look, I think that the reason why you're seeing ICE raids taking place in New York or any other city in America is because there's a lack of cooperation from the city of New York. If the city just simply complied with detainer requests and turned over individuals who are criminals and gang members and drug traffickers, instead of releasing them back onto the streets, then we wouldn't have these ICE raids at all, and it would be safer for everybody involved.
But a lot of the people who are being arrested at courthouses are just going there to fulfill their obligation to respond to a court case. They're not the worst of the worst. They're not gang members. They're not criminals. They've arrested a 6-year-old girl, two 20-year-old high school students. I mean, those are not the people that you should be arresting.
Well, and that's why I think there needs to be a coordinated cooperation, because if they were focused solely, and I agree that the federal government needs to, and I've actually written to the Trump administration about this, that we need to focus on the criminals. I think that what we're going to see play out, and what should play out, is that we've now secured the border. We're seeing no illegal crossers. We're giving ICE the resources they need to keep us safe and deport the people who are here illegally. The administration does need to focus on those criminals and not try to get people who have have been here for decades, have done the right thing, have no crimes. The thing is, a lot of these individuals came over with what the Trump administration would view as illegally. They were allowed in and released into our country by Joe Biden, but they didn't come in through the proper channels. And so that is probably why there's some individuals who have been here only for a short period of time that have been caught up in that type of situation. But what I think we do need at the end of the day, after we clean up the city, get rid of these gang members that have been wreaking havoc, is that we do need to focus on a bipartisan reform here that will help streamline some of these individuals who have been stuck in the system for decades.
Give them a pathway to citizenship?
We need some type of pathway to citizenship if they've been here, again, for a certain period of time, that they've had children here who are already American citizens, that they've worked hard, they've done everything right and never got into trouble. My office has actually been very good at helping people who have come legally. Now, we're talking about people who do not have status in your question, but we've been actually very helpful in being able to help people who have come legally to move forward and become citizens. Hundreds of people from dozens of different countries. They shouldn't need a member of Congress to intervene on their behalf to help them do that. The system should work in a timely manner. And I think there's a way that we can come to some type of resolution. The difference here really, though, is a lot of the Democrats continue to harbor people who are in the country illegally and committing crimes. We've seen that time and again. And the more that they do that, the less likely it is that we're going to be able to come to a resolution.
You know, there are a lot of people who came here under the Biden years who came here because they were really fleeing oppression and persecution. And so they came here seeking asylum, which is what the United States has always been about. So the question is, does it have to be a certain period of time, or maybe there has to be a resolution about, were you really fleeing people who were hurting you?
That's right. And there's very few countries where you'd have a legitimate case for that. And yet we've had people coming from 200 countries around the world using that as a claim. And it's not fair to the people who truly are fleeing, and they get caught up in the system and they get delayed. And by the way, because of Joe Biden's policies, we've had people who have been waiting in line getting pushed all the way to the back of the line because he had this last in, first out policy where people who were coming over illegally in the country were getting court cases over the border, were getting their court cases heard first. So the entire system needs to be rectified, but we have to secure the border, which we have, and deport the criminals, and then we can deal with the people who have been here and try to help them get some type of legal status moving forward.
I guess the question is this: given how divided Congress is right now, is it in the realm of reality that you could actually get a bipartisan agreement to help these people?
I think that we can do it. It could most likely would be after the midterm election. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done right now. I think, I'm part of a problem solvers group, by the way, we're half Republicans, half Democrats. We have other New Yorkers on there, Mike Lawler, Tom Suozzi, Nick LaLota. We talk about this issue on a regular basis, and we all agree that there needs to be some type of resolution. The real focus, I think, and the real problem where we is who's considered a criminal, right? In my view, if somebody's here and they were drunk driving, that's a criminal. They shouldn't be allowed to stay. And some Democrats want to harbor individuals like that. So there's a real, I think, contention there that we need to work out. But I think there certainly is an agreement that could be made between the problem solvers in our caucus. But could it pass the entire House and the Senate and get signed by the president? The president needs to be part of whatever negotiation going forward we conduct.
I want to talk to you about the governor's race in New York. There are a number of good Republican candidates, Elise Stefanik, Bruce Blakeman, others. Unfortunately, Elise Stefanik was booed upstate in the last couple of weeks. I wonder if you have a thought about who would be a strongest candidate to go up against Kathy Hochul.
I'm sure Elise was booed by people who were sent there by the Democrats to do that, to create that story. I think Elise Stefanik is actually very popular throughout the state of New York. She certainly would be the best to contrast Kathy Hochul. I think also that she's a strong woman is very much an advantage because she'll be running against such a weak woman in that race. And I think that if people want public safety, if they want low taxes, and they want responsible spending, not they're seeing their tax dollars wasted on people in this country illegally or a bunch of programs that don't work. We have the most bloated bureaucracy in the state of New York. We spend billions of dollars more than the state of Florida.
And
yet we have millions.
You were there.
Exactly. Well, I was there, and I always fought against the budget. And that the thing is, when I was there, the budget was $125 billion. It is now doubled in the time when I first started in the assembly. And I've always voted against those budget bills because I saw this in the future. And it's so unsustainable, and we're seeing New Yorkers be hammered to death, which is why we, the New York Republicans, delivered SALT relief to give people a break on the federal side of their taxes, because Kathy Hochul and people like Justin Brannan keep taxing them to death.
Can Kathy Hochul be beaten in a state that's a heavily Democratic voters base?
I think that it is very possible. If you saw what happened in the last race, I mean, Lee Zeldin almost won. The reason why Lee Zeldin did not win is because people fled the state and moved to Florida. So when you saw Ron DeSantis gain the votes that Lee DeSantis that Lee would have otherwise had,
they're still fleeing to Florida. So can Kathy Hochul?
They are. If people come out and vote. It depends on the voter base, right? People have to come out and vote. If they're unhappy, if they don't want Zohran Mamdani to be the next mayor, they need to come out and vote. They didn't want Bill de Blasio, yet so many stayed home. We had such a low turnout the year that I ran for mayor in 2017.
That he won.
That he won, and we got stuck, and look what happened. But what I will tell you is that people cannot rest on their laurels. They may be happy that President Trump is the president. They may not be happy that he is the president. They need to get out and vote for the person that they think would best serve, because that's how he gets stuck with terrible people.
Who's the best?
Well, I think personally Elise Stefanik would be fantastic to be the next governor, and I hope she runs. I've encouraged her. She would have absolutely my endorsement.
Who's the best mayor?
Well, I think Curtis Sliwa would be, out of the group that we have, and I'll tell you why. Because all the other three candidates, whether it's Zohran or Cuomo or Adams, they've contributed in one way or another to the destruction of New York City, the deterioration of quality of life, the deterioration of public safety, and making our city less affordable. Curtis Sliwa is the outlier here. He's the one that's not like the others, and he has spent decades serving our city, not as a public elected official, but as a public servant. And I think that if you look at his record of creating the guardian angels because he cares about public safety, if you look at the way he's worked with homeless and mentally ill to transition them off the streets, he has been on the subway, more subways than the transit cop, Mayor Adams, and he's been to more housing projects than the former governor, Andrew Cuomo. He knows our city and he loves our city, and I think it's time to shake things up a little in New York.
Do you think it helps him that he's also got an independent line, the Animal Protection Party?
Yeah, look, he's very independent. He's not. No one can say that he's very close to President Trump. He's very independent. He is somebody who loves animals, as I do, which I think helps, giving him that extra line where people really don't feel comfortable voting for a Republican in New York. They could vote from the independent line. But look, I think Curtis is the kind of candidate that can coalesce, bring together common sense Republicans, Democrats, and independents.
One last question. I wondered how you feel about the Smithsonian Institute and how the president wants to change the exhibits because he thinks that they focus on how bad slavery was.
Look, obviously, we can't turn a blind eye to our history. We need to acknowledge the mistakes that we've made in the past, and they do need to be part of our historical record. They do need to be talked about in museums. I think what the president wants to do is also focus, or put more focus on what makes this country so great, what makes it exceptional, how far we've come as a nation, and why this American experiment has survived. I think that the museums do need to be reevaluated, but we can't erase our history. And I'm also sponsoring the legislation to build a Smithsonian Women's History Museum. And I'm working with people like Billie Jean King and Wonder Woman Linda Carter and others on this project, which will showcase amazing American women who have contributed to building our nation. And I hope to get that done. And President Trump's actually endorsed the idea. He helped, first of all, he's the one who authorized it, and now he's working with me on my legislation to transfer the land. We've got to get that bill passed, and I'm glad to have the president's support. We still need to vote on it, though, and I'm hoping that once we get through some of these issues that he sees with the Smithsonian, that we'll be able to fast track it.
Congresswoman Nicole Malliotakis, thank you for being here, and thank you at home for joining us as well.